right now we see the police officers are continuing to gather, and CBS 2's Allie Bauman is joining us again. Allie, are you seeing it? I guess from your point of view, you're not really seeing much, right?
Well, you know, in the past 5 minutes or so after we last spoke, I did see one of the police drones go up in the air as well. It was flying towards the campus. I lost sight of it at the moment, but it was flying kind of towards the campus here. I mean, you can see there are a couple hundred protesters behind me right outside the campus gates here where we are at 116th and Amsterdam, which is on the side of the Columbia University campus that is closest to Hamilton Hall, which is where those students have broken into overnight and have been occupying, you know, for the past over 12 hours at this point. So, you know, in the past few hours, we've seen the NYPD presence here significantly grow. We've seen officers coming with their helmets, with their zip ties towards campus. I have not personally seen the officers entering campus yet. I'm not sure if you're able to see that on your feed on the other side of campus there. I think, you know, in the past several hours, police have shut down both Amsterdam and Broadway, which are the two avenues that are, you know, the two opposite sides of adjacent to the campuses here. They've shut it down to traffic several hours ago. They put in a lot of barricades all around here, so they are trying to seemingly to try to get the area as quiet as possible. On this side, I know we have, as I'm saying, you know, several protesters here. I don't believe there are nearly as many protesters, if any, on the other side. They were there earlier and they had marched on, you know, a couple hours ago at this point here. So we're hearing that the police are waiting at the direction of Columbia University to enter campus. We haven't seen them actually go on campus yet, but they certainly seem to be prepared to do so.
I can tell you from what I've seen, Allie, you were saying what we might be seeing in the video that we were showing a little earlier was what appeared to be police officers engaging with students at a door. I can't tell you what street it was on. I can't tell you what door it was, but they were engaging. The conversation was ongoing. And, you know, you made this point earlier, Allie, that it is very difficult for the administration to decide when to make this move. And during the press conference, we heard repeatedly over and over again city officials saying that the dialogue continues, almost as if they feel like, oh, we say a little more and they're going to change their minds. But you would get the sense, and since you've been there all week, you certainly know, that these students, these protesters have been very single-minded, and they really haven't been of a mind to say, okay, yeah, we'll give in into your demands, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the protesters have said from the start they are not going to leave until the university agrees to divest from companies that do business with Israel. And the university has said, well, something is happening here behind me. Sorry to interrupt, but it appears that at this point protesters are all of a sudden moving in several different directions. I'm not sure what has just happened that's made them do that. They're seeming to run away from the gates here where we are. I'm not sure what the reason is. They're going both north and south here on Amsterdam. This group has been here for almost all day at this point. I mean, it's grown in the past couple hours, but people have been out here since this afternoon at least. And again, as I've been saying, this is the side that's closest to Hamilton Hall, so I'm not sure if from this side the students are able to see if anything is happening on campus. I cannot see through the gates if anything is happening on campus from this area right here, but all of a sudden in the past minute or so, the large group has suddenly started to move in a sense. And,
yeah.
And to your point, as you were saying earlier, you know, I think that the university and the administration here has definitely struggled with how to respond to this in the past 2 weeks because, you know, Columbia historically for decades has been a university that really prides itself on student activism. It has not just prided itself, it's advertised itself as a school that is for students who are interested in that kind of social justice work and that kind of, you know, activation or social activism work. And so, you know, they've said repeatedly that they don't want to infringe on students' right to protest. And I think that we saw there had been somewhat of a negative response to the administration when something is happening.
Allie,
I'm hearing something being dragged in.
Allie, I just want to interrupt you for a second because we want to take a different camera view. Alicia Reed is joining us live from a different location. And Alicia, perhaps you're able to tell us what you're seeing and what's going on, if anything. Alicia?
Yeah, absolutely, Dick. So it's a very tight squeeze over here, but what you're looking at right now is hundreds of NYPD officers in riot gear. We're on 114th, right off of Broadway, and police have been barricading the area for hours now.
Alicia,
so initially,
I just got to break in.
we were
Alicia?
over by 116th and Broadway.
Yeah, right now we're seeing some sort of action break out. I don't know if Allie is still there because there appears to be some scuffling going on. It's not clear if police officers are there. Allie, can you see anything? All right, Allie may have had to get away from the camera, but it certainly looks right now that there's some sort of disturbance going on. The barricades have been broken. The students are running in different directions. And it's just hard to make out what's going on right now. Something happened with about 5 minutes ago. The protesters started to move. It didn't seem from what we were watching that the police were moving the protesters. That would have been an indication. Perhaps they were moving them. But they started to move, perhaps to something they heard or they saw. And it still looks right now, well, now it looks like there is some activity. Police are moving the barricades back after they apparently were knocked out by protesters, but they don't seem to be entangling themselves with the protesters. All right, Allie, what are you seeing right now?
Can you hear me right now, Dick?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So right now we see several dozen riot cops essentially walking up north on Amsterdam. That's where it seems that the police have cleared the barricades out. So I don't know if you can see them. They have the shields down, the zip ties in hand, and they appear to be, heading right towards campus. So I'm not sure if the police necessarily moved the protesters out so that they could get in, but this line of demonstrators has just appeared here in the past minute or so behind us here. The protesters, as you can imagine, are jeering and are yelling at them. They do seem to somewhat be moving out of their way, although I do see that there are some protesters at least still standing in front of the gates here. So right now it seems to be somewhat of a standoff. You have, the protesters here. The protesters here on one side, the police here on this side, and let me clarify, the protesters who are outside the campus where we are. So these are not the protesters who are the ones that they would assume, seemingly be going after because they're not on campus at the moment. These ones out here, the ones inside, I'm not sure what's happening with them there. But right now we see police definitely, establishing a perimeter.
Yeah, and the one thing we really haven't seen, we weren't up close obviously, but I didn't see any great violence or interaction between police and protesters. The barricades broke, people sprinted back and forth. There might have been a little scuffling, a little pushing and shoving, but right about now, as you pointed out, it looks like, at least in this one location, I don't know if the word stable is a fair way to describe what we've just seen, but certainly now it's seeming to stabilize, as before it was a little more chaotic. Just how close are you to the scene of where the barricades were broken?
I'm standing right in front of the camera. I have my hand on a barricade right now, so I'm near some of the barricades at least. The barricades that were broken, a couple yards away from them at this point. Again, I'm not sure if it was the police that broke them. It would seem so because now the police are here, and it may be that they're trying to make their way inside, but that I'm just speculating here. Right now, the police are actually, turning towards the campus, as we can see them, and it's NYPD officers. There are actually some FDNY jackets in that group there as well, and some seem to be walking towards the campus gates. So we'll be seeing right now if they're going to be going inside. Some protesters are now running towards them as well here. I don't know if I'm standing in the camera's view here, but when the NYPD 2 weeks ago went into...
Allie, let me just tell you something we've learned that I guess we're seeing right now. We've learned that police have been given authority by Columbia University to enter the campus, and I gather what we're seeing right now is exactly that. Police are making their move into the campus. It's believed they gave advance warning of a couple of hours that they were going to move in and clear the area. They wanted all the protesters to clear the area. Now, it's not clear to us whether they will be simply going to Hamilton Hall, which was taken over by protesters and what police are calling professional agitators, or whether they're moving onto the entire campus and perhaps saying it's time to get rid of the encampment. But you certainly think that the priority is Hamilton Hall, where students have barricaded themselves in. It seems to me that a few officers have gone through. We can see this guy who looks like he's ready to... oh no, that's actually just a photographer. That's not a protester who's getting up on the gate to take pictures. So police officers are entering the Columbia University campus, apparently with permission from the university. Ali, what are you seeing?
Right now, yes, we're seeing the police going towards the gates here. Step up on this stool here so that I can see a little bit better from the higher point. Some people already seem to be taken into arrest, and I think these were taken outside because I haven't seen the gates open at any point. So some people, perhaps because they were blocking the gate, they're blocking the entrance for the cops to go in. You know, Dick, I'm not going to lie here. I'm a little surprised that this is the side that the NYPD has chosen to go in on. If I were to be taking bets, I would have thought they would have gone in on the other side because there were significantly fewer protesters outside the gates on the other side. So I would have thought that they would have wanted to go in on the side that had less of a crowd there. But they seem to be making their way towards it on this side. They're already starting to seemingly be putting some people into custody who are outside the gates here. And this is before they've even entered campus on this side.
Let's just point out, Ali, though, there is the possibility that this is happening in multiple locations and our camera is only catching one of them. That's always a possibility. I'm just going to ask the folks here, are we able to get in contact with Alicia Reed, who is at another location? Well, not at the moment. Okay. Not Alicia, but Naveen Dhaliwal is joining us now from in the area. Naveen, what location are you at and what are you seeing?
Yeah, Dick, I'm at Broadway and West 113th, about 3 blocks away from that 116th entrance where Ali is. And this has been blocked off by barricades for hours now. There's no traffic allowed, vehicle traffic that is, for another 2 or 3 blocks away. And the pro-Palestinian protesters are just over to your right. You can see them chanting. You can hear them chanting. They've been standing here for hours now. Just about maybe in the last 2 or 3 minutes, there were 2 large NYPD buses that were going into the barricaded area, and those protesters tried to stop those 2 buses from entering into the zone, is what I'm going to call it. You can see police are here. They are in riot gear. They have their helmets on, their batons on at this time, and they're ready for anything. You had mentioned, Dick, that there's some sort of a commotion, movement happening over by Columbia itself, but over here you can see them chanting. There seems to be a commotion here as well. Again, I'm at West 113th and Broadway, 3 blocks away approximately from that entrance where the real activity is happening. So over here, police are trying to keep these protesters calm. As you can see, they're doing the best they can, but those protesters are demonstrators, I will call them, are working with each other. They've been chanting, they're holding signs, but it seems like they're being barricaded away and keeping away from the zone for safety at this time. Dick.
Yeah, and we can tell you that what we're learning is that police have been moving in, they've been given permission to move in, but the question is, what are they doing? Now, we were just told that police said they would hold a news conference at 114th Street, but I think you know, Naveen, that the idea of a news conference in the middle of activity like this...
Are we able to go with them? Where's Channel 2?
I'm trying to get them up here. Email from GCPI?
That's what it is. So the other...
They have emails from GCPI.
2 other crews.
Naveen, we're just watching you. We're just watching you, Naveen, attempting to get through. What was he saying?
What's happening is actually, what he's saying to me, I'm the 3rd crew here, so Ali and Alicia are inside. So I am going to have to remain out here at West 113th and Broadway. But that's where you can see where police are ready to go. They aren't giving any information as to what's happening 3 blocks away. So that probably, with what your vantage point, Dick, with the chopper as well as Ali, you're able to give us a better idea of what's happening 3 blocks away. But here, the demonstrators have been here for hours. They're trying to get into that zone, and police are ready for them. As I mentioned just about 5-6 minutes ago, 2 NYPD buses, large buses, did enter the zone. It's unclear whether those were to arrest someone or what the deal is with that.
Naveen, if I could just interrupt you, some pictures we're seeing now, I think in the location where Ali Bauman is, it appears that arrests are being made. Ali, are you able to see this? Okay, we've lost Ali Bauman, but I can tell you Yeah, we're efforting Allie, we're efforting to get to Allie, but from what I just saw a few moments ago, it appeared that people were being let out and perhaps somebody was even being carried out. I assume that was a live picture. Allie, are you getting the impression, that arrests are being made?
There are definitely arrests being made. I'm watching it right now. Police taking one person away. I saw a moment ago police taking someone else away in, whether it's the zip ties or the cuffs, whatever it is, that they're taking them away with their arms restricted. And from my vantage point, I don't even think the police have actually entered campus yet. I think these are just people who have been blocking them from going through the gates, because I haven't even seen these gates open yet. So if anything, they've closed the gates since they were allowed to be there before. So they've taken, I've seen at least 4, I want to say, and there may be more than that. And every time police take someone away, and there's another person now going as well. Police taking them away with their arms restricted. So it appears, and again, I'm not 100%, but it appears that the police are arresting the people at the moment. More riot cops are coming through from the other side now, and the protesters are, I don't know if the photographer can turn the camera a little bit so you can see them on this side here. But protesters are coming in. Protesters are now seemingly to clash with police on the other side of where this is all happening. I am now seeing one of the gates at campus be open. So now the police on both sides entering this location outside campus where the barricades are. Police are coming through. Protesters somewhat are clearing out a little bit, or at least leaving this direct area, because it was appearing that they were putting some into custody who were blocking them from entering the main gates of campus. Even more, these ones have their batons in hand, their helmets on here, and are lining up right outside of the gates here as well. You have people on the sidewalks moving out of the way chanting.
Allie, I'm just from the little bits that I'm seeing on screen, I thought I was getting an impression from the gate that there was more than just a couple of students leaving the campus, that there might have been what you might call a slight stream of students leaving the campus. So perhaps with the police moving in, some are moving out. I see behind these officers, I'm seeing some people walk away. I don't know whether they're being taken away, but it is possible that some students have just decided it would be a good idea to get off the campus, and that would probably be very good advice, being that what we're seeing.
And you mean students leaving the campus that you're seeing? Because I've been seeing protesters who have been out here leaving the area.
No, I thought coming through that gate, but I could be wrong. It's a very chaotic situation right now. But as you point out, it's not even clear where the officers are in relationship to the campus, how far they've gotten in, if they've gotten in very far at all, correct?
I haven't even really seen them go in. I see right now they've all are lined up here in front of the campus gates. Right now, where you're seeing them on my camera, they are not, and they have not entered campus on this side yet. They're on the side that is the outside of campus here. I do see what looks like students who are scaling the fence on the inside of the campus there. So it appears they haven't even entered campus yet, and are now moving around the barricades, perhaps to situate themselves to effectively go in.
Let's reset the scene, Allie. What we've been watching in the last, really almost an hour, I think now, police officers gathered around the Columbia campus in riot gear and with zip ties and ready to move in. And in the last 10 or 15 minutes or so, we've seen a lot of movement by police officers, but as Allie points out, it's still not clear that they never ever made their way into the campus, although it's hard to tell sometimes with all the crowds. We can tell you a few hours ago, the mayor had advised that people clear the area. It seemed like a pretty clear warning that the police were going to go in and, if not clear the campus, certainly go into Hamilton Hall, where protesters and perhaps outside agitators, professional agitators, as the NYPD said, took over the hall earlier today and barricaded themselves in. We have no idea if and when the police will be moving in that direction, but we can see that something has been happening for at least the last half hour.
Dick, do you see this right now?
No, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want you to see on my screen the truck that has just pulled up. A truck that I have never seen in my 8 years of being a reporter in New York City, this is the emergency services unit truck here that is a very intimidating sight, where you have officers with shields on the roof here. You know, it looks like a military-grade vehicle that it's coming down Amsterdam right now with protesters on each side. So we're about to see, you know, this is all. I'm assuming this as I'm saying it out loud, if this is probably why they're removing the barricades so that this kind of truck could come through. And behind that, I don't know if you're able to see on the camera, but behind that there is a motorcade, what appears, you know, of police vehicles. And now I'm finally seeing what appears to be the corrections department bus, which, to be frank, I was waiting to be seen because I hadn't seen the corrections department bus yet and was wondering how they were planning to make these mass arrests if they weren't going to have that bus. And now I do see it coming in with this very large police thing here that's coming through. So this is what we're seeing on site right now.
And you know, this is just many of the vehicles.
Quite a sight.
Yeah, you point out, Allie, that you've never seen a vehicle like that. I don't think I have either. I've been around a few extra years. And the departments in this country, not just in New York City, but all around the country, have purchased a lot of these vehicles for events that they are very fearful of, maybe not necessarily this type of an event. But it is interesting to see that behind that vehicle, behind that very large, almost militaristic-looking vehicle.
Wow, what were they doing here?
Go ahead. Wow.
They've just driven up to, this is how it seems they're going to be entering campus right now. Wow. They're not going through the gates, actually. They're what looks like, you know, almost like a fire truck where they have this, what do they call it, like a cherry picker type thing that's now going into what is Hamilton Hall, which is where those students are. So it seems they're not even bothering with the gates. They're just going to be coming onto campus this way.
And it looks like we're seeing it happen right now. Presumably they're going to get to a window, go through a window and get in there. Interesting that they allow our cameras to show this, because presumably anybody on the inside would be able to watch this on television. And now we sit here and wait and see how long they take to perhaps move in. Now you're saying that they have this sort of jerry-rigged ramp heading into something in Hamilton Hall. Is that correct?
Yeah, they drove up. They had the cops here on the roof of this vehicle as they drove up. They put out this, like you're saying, a ramp is essentially what it is, that they just a little ungracefully drove up towards this building. There was a bit of a crash sound out here when it drove up. And, you know,
now they're pulling away.
They're backing up a little bit, but this is, yeah, but, I mean, I don't know if that's just to reposition themselves, but this seems to be their tactic. And I can't help but wonder if the police, you know, do want to, you're saying that you're surprised that they're letting the police cameras see this, but perhaps they do want the cameras to see this because they want to perhaps be more transparent with how this is, because, you know, since the media is not allowed onto campus, perhaps they want to be showing, you know, transparently how they will be executing these arrests.
And it could also be possible that this is a feint or a fake, and that they still would be going in, shall we say, the front door, and perhaps not going through a window, or doing both at once. And now we're seeing the vehicle pull back up to the window, and perhaps they're working on a coordinated effort here. I mean, there are all sorts of tactics that we're not privy to, but you can bet that the NYPD has scouted this out. You said the drones were up. They obviously were looking through the windows as best they could to see what they were up against. And now they have the very difficult task of executing this. Screaming to people, get back. I heard protesters yelling, shame on you. And now they're...
Yes, protesters have definitely been, you know, yelling at them for, you know, this whole time. I have just noticed that one of the gate entrances has just reopened. I'm trying to see if police are entering through this way here. So to your point of if, you know, officers are going in multiple ways. But so right now they're going through,
looks
wow,
like they're going in.
The window here.
Yep. With guns drawn.
You know, it's
guns
because,
drawn.
Wow. Guns drawn. Shields up.
And what's the next move?
You know, it's interesting that we've been talking about, and the, you know, mayor and governor and such and students have been talking about the National Guard being brought in as the last resort, but this, I don't think they were expecting this.
Well, and it almost looks as simply as this officer is trying to open the window. I mean, you would have thought that perhaps they would just smash through it, but or just looking to see who or what is on the other side of that window. But they're not immediately smashing through it, which is the move you thought they might have made.
And why they've chosen this window. I'm not sure if this is just how they're planning to, start and move to the different windows.
Yeah, Allie, you don't have any view on any lower door or anything like that to the Hamilton Hall, do you?
No, there's no street level door to that building. The entrance to Hamilton Hall where the students are is the campus side. So if you're entering from the street side, I guess the window's the way to do it. Is there something, can you see, is there something coming out of the window at this point?
No, there's nothing that I can see coming out of the window. I can't even see, your eyes play tricks on you. At one point you'd say maybe there's a shadow in that window, but I can't say that for sure either. You'd have to think that anyone on the other side of that window really has to be concerned right now what's facing them.
Yeah, and I am now seeing the NYPD dozens going in through the gate as well. So you have police going on the ground through the gate. You have police going on in this elevated sense in the window, looking out through the window. So they're definitely making the move in. And behind me there are hundreds of people. This is where the media pen, so to speak, where the media has been this whole time, but there's also now all the protesters that were outside those gates now. I don't know if they're going to cut my audio because now they're cursing at the police, but they're behind us, yelling at these officers, watching it. Everyone has their phones up recording this. So this is definitely a very
It's also possible that this vehicle we're seeing and these guys on the window are just standing there in the event that they feel like someone's going to come try to burst out the window, escape, that kind of thing, and just sort of intimidate the people who are inside and perhaps never move at all. It's hard to tell right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's hard to tell, or if they're
now it appears they cut the window in half and they're going in. They were actually either moving the window up or cutting it in half. So they have breached Hamilton Hall.
They've breached Hamilton Hall officially. They are going through the window. You have officers on campus going on the ground here.
Now we've seen
they are executing.
This would be the third officer going through, another one behind him. It's hard to imagine what's on the other side. Now they've opened a second window. And this may be one of multiple entrances they're going into right now. We presume they might have been going in the front door, but this one wasn't barricaded, so perhaps this was the wise move by officers. And remember, they're ready for anything. There could be a very peaceful surrender. There could be people who get violent or not. And I think what they're hoping for is that whoever is in there will surrender peacefully. I think we're all hoping for that. Allie,
absolutely,
I was going to say, has the crowd gotten any bigger while you're out there of protesters around the building?
Yes, and it definitely has. It's grown in the past few hours just in general with protesters getting here, and now they're all on the sidewalks here behind the barricades watching the police do this. And I have noticed, so where we are, there's like an elevated walkway that goes from across Amsterdam from the campus to the other building that's on the other side of campus that's not technically, I guess not technically on campus. So there's like an elevated walkway here essentially behind me, and that's not accessible unless you're on campus. And I see now dozens and dozens of people up there watching this as well. So whether they're people who, were on campus for other reasons, live on campus or whatnot, there's a large audience in this area.
It's a fascinating.
That is watching this all play out.
It's a fascinating approach or a tactic. Now we don't know what's going on other doors, perhaps other windows, but this certainly isn't a lightning strike into Hamilton Hall. This is a slow, laborious process. So you have to figure perhaps there are two or maybe two more points of entry that they're going into right now. But right now, I think we're up to about 9 or 10 officers that have made their way in there.
And there's a line behind of, I don't even know, at least a dozen officers that are on the ladder behind them waiting to, seemingly go in. They're lined up behind the cops that are going through the window now. And they have a line that were all in that truck that pulled up a few minutes ago, seemingly going in.
And they all are armed, and they all have riot gear on, and they don't know what they're going to encounter because police had been told that professional agitators were in Hamilton Hall. They didn't know how many, and they couldn't say where they were from necessarily, but they did say, quote, "We have seen them elsewhere," which is sort of a warning to officers that They're professionals, they know what they're doing, and perhaps they want to make sure that they're not setting any traps or they're not waiting for them. But now it appears there's a much more energetic, shall we say, approach into the building. And now, assuming once they get in there, they have to detain the people who are in there, they have to put them in the zip ties, and then they have to get them out of there and then also say to themselves, okay, we're going to be coming down to some protesters and we're not going to be happy to see these arrests. And that could make things very difficult for the NYPD.
Definitely, and that's why you have these barricades here, and you know, that's why I think before this truck came in, they made a point to move the protesters to the opposite side of the street behind the barricades. But I do want to, you know, remind our audience that when the police arrested the students, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago or so, the first go around, and they brought them down to police headquarters downtown for processing and such, there was a large group of protesters that actually tried to block that bus that was carrying the arrested students as it got down. Clearly, they were not fully successful. Police were able to carry out what they needed to do with the people that they had in custody there. But you know, that is the types of pushback that we've been seeing from protesters out here has been, you know, that type of demonstration here. Right now, you know, we don't see people seeming to break through the barricades. Everyone does seem to be, that I can see, respecting the police barricades that are here. They are chanting, of course, but that's, you know, nothing illegal about that. So, and you know, each time I look back over to the truck with the police officers, it seems like more police officers in khaki pants are lining up.
It was just a little difficult to hear you for a second. My question is, are there still, from your vantage point, officers going in through the main gate of the campus?
The main gate is open. The gate is open. There are police officers in riot gear standing outside at this point. I saw a couple dozen go in a few minutes ago. I don't see any more going in at the precise moment, and I don't see anyone coming out either.
The reason why I ask is because I think it's that secondary question that we have, which is, A, we just assumed they were going into Hamilton Hall to remove those students, but B, would there be any kind of larger action on the campus? Because you have to admit that if you're the police, you say, okay, we clear out Hamilton Hall, but if we leave other, shall we say, professional agitators who are still on campus, the possibility exists that they could try and do something else that they would be worried about. So I have been curious this whole night to wonder.
Well, there are 3 encampments as of this afternoon. There's the one in Hamilton Hall, there's the original encampment on the lawn, and then today, the protest group, the student organization that's been organizing these protests, has said there is actually a second outdoor encampment on campus that has sprung up today. So as of this afternoon, there were at least 3 different encampments, all for the same message, all with the same group, that were on campus here. So, you know, they very well maybe also be trying to clear out the encampment that's happening with those tents that we've been seeing on the lawns, as well as a possible second one. But that I'm not sure of. At this point, I can only see for certain that, you know, officer after officer after officer, a couple handful of officers at this point, with the emergency services unit of the NYPD, are now going through the window of Hamilton Hall. Now, in the past minute or so, the lights have turned on in that floor where it's been since we've gone in. So we're going to be continuing to monitor this as the officers continue to go into Hamilton Hall. We're going to pause for at the moment and be right back.
This is breaking news.
And good evening, everyone. This is Maurice Dubois in the CBS 2 newsroom. We are looking at live pictures now. NYPD officers entering Hamilton Hall at the campus of Columbia University. It has been an intense situation all night as officers have approached this building, which has been taken over by protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, as well as what the NYPD and the mayor are calling outside agitators. They say they have been patient, but they have decided now is the time to go in and retake the building. They have permission, obviously, from the campus, from the administration of Columbia there. But we have seen officers entering from the top of the spear, the tip there of a military-style vehicle that the police have been using to get officers in the building. Exactly how that's going, we do not know. We have seen officers entering the campus through another side. We know there are arrests. An unfolding, intense situation at Columbia University. Full report continues here on CBS News New York on the stream and CBS 2 News at 11. We'll see you then. To our live coverage here of the situation unfolding on the campus of Columbia University. NYPD officers in riot gear right there, and students there on the side. There are chants going on. There have been arrests tonight. The main point here tonight is that officers have moved in to retake Hamilton Hall. As you'll recall, the mayor and the police commissioner and others have said it was partly retaken or partly taken over about 12 hours ago by outside agitators. NYPD and the mayor have had enough. They have gone in and they are making a stand tonight on the campus. Now, live on the street there, right outside the campus gates, CBS 2's Allie Bauman. Allie, what do you see right now?
Maurice, yeah, we're right out here on 116th and Amsterdam outside the campus gates of Columbia University. You know, about maybe 20 or so minutes ago, this very massive NYPD emergency services truck came through. It is something that I had not seen before in my years of reporting in New York City, and it came and it pulled right up to the outside of Hamilton Hall, which is where those group of protesters have barricaded themselves inside since early this morning. Now, the campus gates on this side have been closed, and the police truck pulled right up to about the second floor window here of that building, and we saw maybe a dozen or even more officers break through the window and climb in through with shields, with helmets, with zip ties around their waist here. While that was happening at the same time, one of the gates here did open, and NYPD officers, once again in riot gear, did walk through on the ground through Columbia University's front gates here. Now, this is all happening in front of hundreds of protesters who have been outside the entrance here, as well as media for hours here who are watching this, and the protesters here have been jeering at the police. We did see several, arrests being taken place outside of the campus, even as the police were first trying to get up to the gates. They were arresting some people who were standing in front of the gates. We haven't seen any protesters from inside come out yet under arrest. We haven't seen any of the officers who went into the building come out on this side yet, but we're certainly waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything like this, Allie. No doubt I haven't seen anything like that military-style looking vehicle that the officers use to get in there. Talk to me about the scene on the street, because different camera angles show different things. We see there is a sense of calm right behind you. There's a bit of chaos off to the other side, and maybe to the other side a little bit more chaos. I can't really get a feel for it. Maybe you can set the scene for us in terms of confrontations with officers and so forth.
It may be a sense of calm right behind me, but don't let the shot be misleading, because right now there's barricades that are preventing people from going into the street where these officers are and getting closer to where the campus is. Now, I'm losing track of what time it is, but about an hour or so ago, there were hundreds of protesters that were just outside of the campus gates on the other side of the street here, and at some point, dozens of officers in the riot gear came through, started moving the barricades, and that's when we started to see, more clashes break out between protesters and police here. It didn't seem to get too violent or anything from what we saw, but we did see the police take about a handful of people into custody here as they were trying to clear them out here. Now, at this point, most people that I'm seeing are abiding by the barricades that are here, that are staying staying on the sidewalk and abiding by the barricades that they set up. But hours ago, police actually shut down traffic here in Amsterdam for cars. So there haven't been cars driving through here, just been people in the street, and now they are, congregating on the sidewalk behind the barricades here, listening to what the police orders were, but I don't know if you can hear them right now chanting "Shame on you" at the police.
Yeah, I mean, Ali, let's talk about that vehicle, if you will. It's there in the center of the shot. There's a guy standing in the way, but it's a big, black, almost like a fire truck meets a police emergency services unit truck, and it's got this cherry picker looking sort of arm on the back of it. I don't know if you can see it pointing at the window right there. We've never seen anything like that in the city in all of our years of reporting here. What did you make of that and how it was received and how officers, basically it was a show of force as they pulled up?
I think that's a perfect way to describe it. It was definitely a show of force. I mean, they came through this crowd of protesters that are out here. The police drove through sitting on the roof with their shields in front of them, with their helmets already on. They drove right up. I couldn't tell if they actually drove into the building. It sounded like a little bit of a crash when they drove right up to the building. I'm not sure if it was just the curb or whatnot, but it was a loud entrance, and it was, I think that it's interesting that we're having such a public entrance into the building, because the university is not allowing, media on campus at this point. They've asked even students to leave campus who are living in the dorms or to shelter in place. So what's happening behind those campus gates, we cannot see, but they've definitely made a public display of this, and they've done so in front of the protesters. And then they put that cherry picker, like you said, it's almost like a ramp that they lifted up and put up right to the window there, and then one by one went through the window.
Okay, Ali, surreal in so many ways, definitely unusual, but it seems to have helped them achieve their objective, which is to get into the building and probably take it back here at some point this evening. We're going to let you stand by for a minute there. Keep an eye on what's happening. CBS 2's Alicia Reed is on the other side of campus. This is 116 and Broadway. Alicia, what do you see at your vantage point?
Maurice, they actually moved us over to 114th and Broadway, and right now we're on 114th. What you're looking at are people that are being taken out of the campus in handcuffs into buses that they brought and drove over to 114th. And so we saw at least 4 or 5 packs of officers walking onto campus, and right now,
let me pull that out.
Give us 1 second here, guys. They're moving us around. Give us 1 second. And so what we saw were packs of officers coming onto 114th and going onto campus. And in the meantime, they have the Heru team with the drones watching over the campus. Their officers manning the streets, telling students to shelter in place. So there are officers at the front of each building ensuring that these students are not coming out. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but there are people chanting from their windows and from the front of the buildings, "Shame on you," to the officers. But again, right now on 114th, I must say it is pretty calm. They are bringing people off into the buses now. At least 5 buses have been parked on 114th as they start bringing the people out. And the NYPD has been carrying the press just one step at a time, closer and closer to where we are right now. And I think this is the closest that we'll get, where they're actually bringing protesters out in handcuffs and bringing them over to the buses. Maurice?
And Alicia, it looks like the strategy, a smart one in any operation such as this, is to overwhelm with numbers, with force. And when you said there were packs of officers moving in a group in different directions to go after people on the campus to take them out in cuffs, what kind of numbers would you say that looked like? Like how many officers at a time, and how many people did they seem to take out, best you could tell?
Yeah, absolutely. Hundreds of officers. I want to say the first pack was at least maybe 200, and then they had a second pack and a third pack. But by the fourth, there weren't as many. We're hearing protesters on the other side. I think that's Amsterdam. They're getting louder and louder. But right now, they actually slowed down in taking people from inside. The first bus is leaving right now. We can see that first NYPD police van leaving with people inside. Some of them were shouting, trying to shout through the windows, "Free Palestine." But as of right now, I would say they have things under control here, but there are lots of officers still manning the streets and making sure that the students who are inside are sheltering in place. Maurice?
Yeah, a lot of numbers when you look at officers right there, Alicia. One more thing, I don't think you're going to be able to fully answer this, but this is important. The mayor and the police commissioner talked about outside agitators, professional protesters, who they really see as the issue, the main problem here. And I'm guessing that you couldn't tell who was arrested. Were they, outside-looking people or student types or some of both? Or you couldn't, it's night, it's a lot of officers. What'd you see?
Yeah, we couldn't really see faces, and they were rushing us past the buses as they were trying to get us from one location to the next. I can say, looking at the bus right now that just left, it's now it's on 114th in Amsterdam, and there's a crowd of protesters. Officers are now running in that direction, I guess, to try and calm the situation. But it is getting louder a little bit further away from us. But they do have us in pen, so we're just kind of stuck in one place and trying to observe as things happen, but we can't tell what is happening, but it's getting really loud. Yeah,
I didn't think so, Alicia, but it'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out when they give us the totals of the people who they've arrested, who were students, who they advised to get out of here, and they told parents to get their kids off of campus ASAP. Maybe some of them were arrested tonight. We're guessing there were. But did they get these outside agitators and professional protesters as they described them? That also remains to be seen. Alicia, nice work. We'll come back to you and Ali in just a little bit. But right now we're going to go to Richard Esposito, who can give us some analysis and kind of break down what we're looking at here. Richard, I hope you're able to see the same pictures we are. What do you make of what you've seen so far? Police moving in with what seems to be overwhelming force.
I think Maurice, what you've seen, first, the officers entering the building on an upper floor. You'll notice that they're a unit all clad in tan pants. You don't see riot gear, just helmets. You don't see nightsticks. What you see is an overwhelming number of officers. Reporters have noted the drone coverage overhead, and you can be sure they have a good schematic of inside the building, and they have good video, so they know who they want to arrest, and they know who they prefer not to arrest if possible. This is not like, I don't know if you recall the Republican convention in New York, where I think 1,200 or more, 1,800 people were arrested protesting. That's not going to happen here. The police are doing this in a very judicious way. They're trying to avoid images that would encourage and amplify other protests. And the way to do that is use overwhelming force in terms of numbers, but not overwhelming force in terms of zip ties, in terms of any of the tools you might see in other cities, like in Tampa, where police are responding with, looks like tear gas and zip ties. You're not seeing any of that, and you're seeing not that many people being taken off campus. Now, the question is, outside agitators is always a tricky phrase. Certainly, it means non-students. Certainly, they've identified who they say are professional agitators. In the past, there have certainly been people connected to on the campus, not today, but in the past week, people on the campus who are connected to known alleged terrorist, according to intelligence officers.
You know, Richard, I'm wondering what you make of that vehicle right there. We're getting some reporting from our team here. The ESU, Emergency Services Unit vehicle, is called the Lenco Bear, a ballistic engineered armored rescue vehicle with MARS, a mobile adjustable ramp system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we saw this vehicle. It's right there in the middle of your screen, right up against Hamilton Hall, where the officers entered that second floor window. We saw that vehicle come in and really, you know, show a show of force and give the officers sort of an impervious vehicle to operate from, and then go about their business. Have you seen that before?
I have seen it before in New York, in Los Angeles. It's a very effective tool. You see that it could pull right up to the building, no limited risk. It's a heavy vehicle. You see that it has the ability to raise a ladder. It has other tools that can be used with it as well. In this case, they're not using it in a forceful way. They're using it as a deployment tool. And forgive me for not having the technical terms in front of it, of what the vehicle's capabilities are.
But it is a very impressive vehicle, and it's almost like a tank, right? It was a real show of force.
Like a tank.
Yeah, as those officers moved in. What do you make of the way they're going about this? I think it was great for you to point out that they were wearing helmets, not riot gear, as some of us may mistakenly think, but helmets only. That's to protect themselves and to be careful with students, right? Young people.
That's correct. They are going in a way where they have a huge number, but you can see that they're going in with protective gear on, not riot gear. You don't see those big shields. You don't see batons. You don't see full face coverings. You see that on some of the officers standing by outside in case they need to do that. But right now, they're going in sheer numbers is the best tool in this kind of action, and that's what the police are using. They're using numbers. And I think you'll find the number arrested will not be that large. Remember, it's actually not a huge number of protesters in that building to begin with.
And what do you make of these protesters? We're talking about these so-called outside agitators, professional protesters, as the mayor and the police commissioner called them. You've seen them in other situations, such as what? Where have you seen them?
So let me call them a violent fringe for the moment, without who's outsiders, who's not. But you've seen them in the George Floyd protests. You've seen them at Occupy Wall Street. You've seen them at any number of events. And sometimes they almost appear to be hijacking someone else's cause, wrapping themselves in a cause that isn't quite theirs, because their cause is disruption. In a sense, some of them are anarchists.
Yeah, what about that? I mean, what's the motivation? Just to raise hell, basically?
Yes, to raise hell in the sense of causing disorder, showing authorities being heavy-handed, but it doesn't help the protest. If you're someone who's there for pro-Palestinian reasons, you're making your point with banners, with flags, with voices, all things that the university may not like, but they'll tolerate. If you're there encouraging people to light flares in the faces of cops, block traffic, break windows, that's a different thing altogether. And while the students, if you recall, had compared this to the Vietnam-era takeover of that building, in 1968, there were millions of Americans against the war, millions. That is not a correct parallel with what you're seeing now. And that's an important distinction when people try and say, look, this violence comes in a pattern. You didn't see that time either. One of my friends represented 1,200 of the arrestees at that time.
Yeah, and what we saw with the takeover of Hamilton Hall last night was people with hammers and a sophisticated pulley system, you know, to get supplies up and down from the ground up to the building. They came in and trashed the place. They, you know, destroyed windows and doors as they broke into the building. The work, the NYPD said, of these outside agitators.
Yes, and the police commissioner has just let me know that things should be calming down up at Columbia now.
It appears to be that way. As we look at the scene right now, this is video from earlier, but if we're able to go back to the live pictures, we can see this, I believe. Guys, tell me which street this is. I can't tell. Is that Amsterdam or Broadway? I think it's Amsterdam. But what that is officers kind of standing but not moving. There's no movement here. What does that tell you, Richard?
It tells me what I'm seeing in a direct quote from someone in the police commissioner's office, which is all is good now at Columbia, and that they were able to get the people out smoothly, they say, and they did not have to get too many people out. I think that would indicate that tactically they've done a good job. This is a contact of yours at the NYPD? This is yes. The senior police official. High-ranking official. So saying that all is good at Columbia, that doesn't mean it's an all clear, but they feel like they have things under control. Is that what they're saying? That's correct. And they feel like they've gotten out the key people that they needed to get out. And that would be a pretty quick operation. I mean, this is less than an hour since they moved in there and retook Hamilton Hall and reestablished order, as you put it, on campus. Yeah, you know, it's like with tailors, measure twice, cut once, right? The operation is all in the planning. Yes. Okay. Looks like the plan has been executed and pulled off rather well. Richard, thank you so much. I think we're going to move on now to CBS 2's Naveen Dhaliwal. Naveen, where are you and what's your vantage point right now? What do you see?
Yeah, Maurice, I'm at West 113th and Broadway, and there have been a group of protesters here for several hours now. You can see them there chanting. They've been holding their signs. There have been barricades here been placed, and there is no vehicle traffic for, I'd say, about 3 blocks into this area, but there is foot traffic, as you can see. Now, as the NYPD vehicles move into the zone past West 113th, these demonstrators really surround these vehicles and are trying to get past the barricades. It just happened in the last 2-3 minutes, but police are ready. They have their gear, they have those helmets on, the batons ready, and they are well aware of what's happening just a few blocks away here at Columbia as those arrests, as the NYPD converges on to Hamilton Hall. You can see them, they have been ready. The barricades have been in place, but so far, no major issues at this corner. There seems to be order for the most part. At one point, the protesters sat on the ground up against the barricades, chanting, taunting the officers. But it seems like so far this corner is order for the most part. But we are keeping a close eye, Maurice, and we will bring you the very latest from here. Back to you. Okay, good work there, Naveen Dhaliwal. Thank you so much. At 113 and Broadway. This image here, I believe this is 114 and Broadway. What you can see in both of these pictures is that there appears to be police in a state of calm. There is no agitation going on. It appears they've gone in and accomplished their mission. They've come into the zone and flooded it with a lot of officers with a large vehicle, and they seem to have retaken Hamilton Hall. There have been arrests made, and at the moment, it appears we can say that things are under control at Columbia. But we're going to continue to watch it. We'll have more for you right here on CBS News New York, streaming, and on CBS 2 News at 11 o'clock. I'm Maurice Dubois. We will see you as we continue tonight.